Welcome to Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods. I am your host, Corey Nathan. This is where we get to speak to the brilliant and creative people who make the greatest coming attractions, movie posters, and digital campaigns of all time. This program is brought to you by our friends at the Golden Trailer Awards and by Make It Universal and Rotten Tomatoes presents Seen on the Screen. I'm grateful to all the folks who helped bring this show to you, including today's guest, Brent Allen Hagel. You heard me talking about him, Trailer VO Brent. And if you don't know Brent, well, first of all, if you don't know Brent, you're just not cool. But if you don't know Brent, you would definitely know his voice. Trailer VO Brent is a trailer narrator. He is the Clio's voice of God. So if you go to the Clio shows, he's a network promo announcer, narrator, and a huge comedy fan. I didn't know that about you. So
love you. Yeah. Love me, my Mel Brooks. Yeah, sure.
Have you ever done any stand-up or improv or anything like that?
No, terrified of it. I'd probably be good at it, but it's better just to like a small group setting of 4 and we just kind of riff and make up skits and have fun that way, sort of thing, you know.
I guess you're always doing improv. You have kids. You have
Sure, yeah. Imagination land. Yeah, it comes in with the VO. It's always being able to imagine the scene. What are we voicing over?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, so does that okay, so I'm gonna just dive right in. So when you're doing a read, is that part of it? Are you doing like a form of method acting where you're imagining the scene and you're allowing that inspiration to affect the read, or are you thinking much more technically in terms of the tone and the pauses and the pitch and all that stuff?
Both. It depends on if they let me see a rough or not, or you know what the editor has done, or if they have a temp track. Sometimes I just get blank. Most of the time, I would say it's just block letters on a white page, which you would typically see from a trailer house because of confidentiality reasons or whatever. So I have to basically play a character version of myself. And develop the voice, tone, and style for that particular genre of film and for this particular story. And I draw a lot of inspiration. We'll get into this of my influences in trailers, such as we were working on something, and when I watched down the rough, it reminded me of the style of the Beethoven trailer from the 90s. And so I went with my voice, but a John Leader style delivery for that. So basically,
what do you mean by that? So for folks who aren't familiar with all the different specific, VO guys and trailers,
well, you guys got to do your research. Come on.
Yeah.
No, but I live and breathe this stuff. You know, I'm a nerd. Like some people are nerd for cars and other things, but I'm just a nerd for styles of narration for trailers. It just happens to be my thing. It's kind of a bit more as if formal, like he's wearing a tuxedo. If you ever see videos of John Leader, he did Indiana Jones, he did Beethoven, he did a bunch of films in the 90s.
Okay.
But he's much more formal in his delivery. I'm trying to think of an example. This summer, a new adventure with an old friend. There's a lot of like warmth in it. Yeah. And a lot of like family, I guess, in the texture and the vocal qualities. It's very welcoming, but it's also very teasy, very leading on to, ooh, what's going to happen next? Rug pull style.
Interesting. So you say you're like a trailer VO geek. So welcome to Trailer Geeks.
Am I the right place?
Gods, right. So how did that become an interest for you? And then how did you get into this isn't an easy business to get into. So I'm really curious how you started to break that ice.
I would say I'm still trying to get into the business, Corey. A lot of, but you know, I'm working on stuff, but some of these trailer houses, they just use their guy or girl. Like there's no negotiation about it. The studio exec says we go with this person. The trailer house has no, decision about it whatsoever. That's above their pay grade. The senior vice president or EVP says we're going with this person and we're using them for the 12 film franchise. So I'm constantly trying to pitch myself, but, and kind of get in there, but, let's not mess with $100 million, $200 million marketing machine. Right. So I don't blame them for making that decision. I got into it through, listening to old time radio is the short answer. So I would summer in Seattle in like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. When my parents got tired of me and my brother, they'd drop us off for 3 months or 2.5 months up in Seattle with my cousins. And they didn't have TV or cable or anything. They were kind of just, they went to the library and checked out records, Beatles records, Mel Brooks tapes. We watched a lot of comedy shows in kind of old time black and white. And the Jack Benny radio
Oh,
program. The
interesting.
Jack
Okay.
Benny now coming up next on the Jack Benny radio program. So I listened to a lot of these golden voices of the 50s, and we all intimidated that, and we would make our own versions of that. So when it was over, we would throw just basically a white sheet and get a table and get two fake microphones,
Yeah.
and I think a camcorder. At the time, they had a camcorder, a big VHS classic, rewind the tape and film it again, sort of thing. And we would just shoot sketches, and we would try our best to intimidate it. Later in life, in high school, I was asked to be the sound guy, and I pulled that out of a hat because I had done it and I knew how to do it. And everyone's like, "Wow, you got that sound down, like the radio announcer guy sound."
Was this even
right?
before your voice changed as a little
Yeah,
kid? Like fourth grade, you're like, yeah, that's
yeah.
pre, adolescence.
I'm sure it sounded like this at the time, but it was. But I had the cadence down of the man in the tuxedo behind the ribbon mic,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
giving the Crest, the original toothpaste, now with extra whitening and tartar protection. That sort of
Yeah, yeah.
cadence and delivery. And then people would tell me, "Hey, you're good at being an announcer." And so when you get into voiceover, being an announcer is kind of frowned upon these days because they want everyone to be kind of sound real. So it was kind of a detriment when I basically thought I was going to, get behind a mic and show a producer that I can do this voice, and they would be like, "Wow, here's your $1 million." It turns out they don't really want that or need that. So I had to do a lot of training in order to figure out what it is the market wants. So I did about 7 years of promo training. I'm a product of the Los Angeles workshop system. So
Okay.
there's classes here and studios you go to here in Los Angeles with guest directors, teachers, mentorships in certain genres. My area of study has always been promo. There's video game people and audiobook people and all these different areas of voiceover. And my thing has always been promos. I want to be the voice of a network and movie trailers. So I trained for 7 years. Before I got my first gig with NBC as an on-air promo voice.
Okay.
And so that time I was working in the kitchen washing dishes. I worked at a senior living home, so I would basically cook food for the senior living facility. I was the kitchen manager, executive chef, and make the menus and plan everything out and wheel people around in wheelchairs and do all that for 5 years. But a lot of it was just physical labor and sacks of potatoes and hand washing dishes and managing, and I would use my money for the workshops. And then eventually I finally got my gig, and I was able to convince my wife to let me go full time, like leave one to jump to the other, which is terrifying to leave a stable job and go full time into voiceover. But I took a risk and I did it. And a lot of people ask me about that when they DM me and they say, "Hey, Brent, how'd you make that transition from having your day job and I would do my auditions in my car. I'd be in my my chef outfit and covered in whatever it was, tomato sauce or whatever, and jump in the car and record my audition and get back in the kitchen." So those auditions didn't go very well because I was obviously just using my phone in a car and the audio wasn't that great. But reading 10,000 pieces of copy, just reading copy all the time, and just watching and listening and everything really prepares you for what it's like out in the marketplace. But it's been a long road from being able to do it full time as my career, which I am now, which I'm extremely blessed and grateful for, to wanting to do it.
So the workshops, the training, the workshops, is the most important part of that being able to get your reps in and get a little bit of feedback? Or not a lot of folks have talked about, I mean, some folks talk about going to film school if that's the route they went, but there are any number of other disciplines and career paths that do require training. And so I'm curious what you gleaned the most from 7 years of training.
Well, that was just in workshop. After that, I became a teacher, and I've taught hundreds and hundreds of workshops and I brought in guest directors. So I've been training. I've still trained, constantly. If I'm working with a new producer or something, I'm always learning. But what you learn is you're sitting in a room with 12 other talent, and you observe I keep popping my P's. Sorry. You observe a professional director directing talent. So you
By the
see
way,
what.
I think you're the first person we've had on any of these shows, the Trailer Geeks, my politics, like the first person who's brought up the possibility that they might be getting into plosives. So like popping your piece, like
Sorry,
that's totally
we got to take this one over, guys. I apologize.
Yeah.
That's the
Anyway,
gig.
yeah.
But no, you observe, like a guest director from NBC would come in, an agent would come in. It'd be agent night. You'd either be someone who works at a trailer house would come in, and there's just all these guest directors coming in,
Yeah.
and you get to see them. And then 12 people or 10 people would read for them. They'd all read the same piece of copy or maybe a different piece of copy, and you would see what they want, what they're looking for, and they're not necessarily full-time voiceover directors.
Yeah.
They just know what goes on air or what finishes on a trailer, and they're all trying their best to guide us into that zone. So just observing dozens and dozens and dozens of guest directors and
Yeah.
people reading, everyone's going to read it different. So just sitting there and watching other people's interpretation of the script, you can learn a lot, because they would bend a word a certain way or hold on a vowel, or they would just approach it maybe with a different emotional context than you thought of. Their version of drama is different than my version of drama. Mine may be a little more intense. There might be a little more loving. But a lot of voice actors, and we'll get into this because a lot of editors have DM'd me and say, hey, I'm working in the Bay. I'm considering getting into voiceover. Do you have any tips for me? And I'll send them some practice scripts and things like that. Sorry, I just totally drew a breath when I thought about the others.
It's interesting. It's an interesting point to underscore, because I remember, this isn't completely analogous, but when I was in the New York theater scene and then eventually moved out to LA, I was always producing, but I also was studying the craft. I was studying, on stage, in front of the camera, writing, and I had two mindsets, and they were very distinct. One was, there were workshops where it'd be a casting director or an agent. And to me, those workshops, I approached in the wrong way. I approached with a very transactional mindset. Get in front of this casting director so that they would bring me in for the audition and ultimately hire me for the job. And I got nothing out of that other than just remembering a few of the casting directors, and it really went nowhere. But I had taken time in New York. I learned it was a form of one of the American forms of method acting. And then out here, I got to study with the lady who took over for Stella Adler, this wonderful, wonderful lady who only died a couple of years ago, Joanne Linville. And we were doing work, like we were in the theater, and sometimes it was explicitly like classroom workshop setting. Joanne was great though, because what we did with that one was she went 12 weeks at a time, and we usually studied specific writers. So we do 12 weeks of Chekhov, 12 weeks of Strindberg, 12 weeks of O'Neill, 12 weeks of Odets and Tennessee. And it was just that, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because that changed my life. It changed who I am. It changed how I see the world. Obviously we were growing as artists, but that approach to it was very different. I wasn't looking to get a job and get in front of somebody, and I was growing as an artist in those experiences. And not so coincidentally, some people, I'm not going to name drop now, but really big, a few of the folks from that little ensemble went on to huge, huge, huge careers. And it's, that's the irony of it, is that we were focused on the craft. We were focused on, on learning the material and learning how to approach the material, and learning how we could offer, how much of ourselves we could pour into the material and breathe life into it. It was just a completely different mindset than okay, let me get in front of this trailer producer or creative executive so that they can hire me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're totally different mindset. So,
and a lot of the times they don't actually have the power to hire you. The client is always going to make the decision, but yeah, just go there to work on the craft and observe. And I tell everybody that I work with to find 5 heroes, right? Find 5 heroes in the voiceover business whose career you want to emulate. And they could be male, female, they could be any genre. For me, that was mostly trailer and promo male voices.
Yeah.
And I've met and done either met them and shook their hands in person or done one-on-one training with them.
Yeah.
And I was going to say earlier, the difference between workshop and one-on-one training is in workshop you get to see all these 12 different people approaching the piece of copy. In workshop you really focus on your own individual sound and your own individual craft. And depending on who you're working with, you have to try to not emulate your hero, which I did for a couple of years. I was trying to just copy their voice because they were so successful and doing so well and getting so much work. You have to learn to take your version of their delivery, kind of a fifth of it or 20% of it, and adopt it into your style. So I'm basically an amalgamation of my 5 heroes plus my own voice.
This episode is brought to you by Make It Universal and Rotten Tomatoes presents Seen on the Screen, a bi-weekly podcast that takes listeners behind the scenes at NBC Universal, offering an intimate look at how film and storytelling have impacted the lives of its employees and creative community. Hosted by Jacqueline Coley, journalist and awards editor at Rotten Tomatoes, the series is home to vibrant conversations blending humor, introspection, and unforgettable anecdotes, and a bit of trivia. Jacqueline sets the tone for the show. As an established authority in entertainment, she brings warmth, curiosity, and insight into every episode, exploring film's ability to connect and transform. Make It Universal and Rotten Tomatoes presents Seen on the Screen is available to you on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. So who are your 5 heroes?
Probably Howard Parker.
Okay.
Phil Terrence, Scott Rummel. I would probably say John Leader is up there. I think I wrote him down. Mark Elliott for Disney. And let's see, Ashton Smith, of course. He's been crushing it a long time. I can't get that as deep as Ashton. I mean, I think for horror and heavy action, I mean, he just crushes it. Hal Douglas is up there for your action and your kind of more dramatic reads. And Percy Rodriguez, for the Jaws trailer and for Poltergeist, I believe. Yeah, so all of these people that I've just kind of studied. So
DLF had already passed away by the time you got into the business.
Sorry. And Don LaFontaine, of course. I forgot numero uno there.
Yeah.
But everyone asked me if I had met him, and no, I was around. I just had not entered the industry before he had passed.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point. So you make a distinction between workshops and then some of the one-on-one training. We all actually do have the opportunity to do one-on-one training. We just don't call it that. So, if you're at, say, Buddha now, and you're an up-and-coming editor, or even if you're going the writer-producer track, and you have the opportunity to sit in a Robert Walker's bay or an Eric Archer's bay, or, and I could go to any one of these shops, you're waiting for notes, you finished your day, and Robert's still there cranking something out. Or if you're at AV Squad and, Tommy's still there, trying to perfect it, or Chad, or, Buckman or Gonzo, and you have the opportunity to be in any one of those bays. That's your one-on-one training. That's your post-doctorate graduate work, man. That's such a gift to be able to be around the Bill Neals of the world, that's just such a gift to be around some of the greats, I mean, Wildcard just has a plethora of legends right now.
Yeah.
So that's what's so cool doing this, is because I get to hang out with we're not making trailers, but for me, it's I'm a history buff. I love hearing their thoughts about approaching the work, getting guys like Skip Chassan on the show, getting some of these greats, man. And I know full well that there's 6, 7, 8, 12 people who are like, Corey, you didn't mention my fucking name. What's up?
yeah, right. You just left out
everybody.
I left out Don LaFontaine. I mean, what do you mean?
That's okay. Well, you know who you are, and I love you anyway. But
to your point, the same thing for me is I didn't have the privilege to do that, so I had to go on YouTube and basically find behind the scenes footage of them performing. And I learned so much from just watching them work the mic, and seeing Hal Douglas, even in the skit he does, or the Five Guys in a Limo, all of these kind of skits they've done, they're still educational. And I learn a lot from just observing somebody work, to your point.
Yeah.
And going into the workshop, and if there's somebody that comes into the workshop who's a working pro who is currently on air working a network, and you get to watch them and see them and observe, how they interact with the director, how many takes they take, what do they do in between takes, because there's also a certain etiquette for in-session etiquette. Are you easy to work with? Are you coughing a lot? Are you super drunk? Like, is this person easy to work with? Can we hire them back? And you learn
He's
all that.
good 3 drinks in, but once he
Yeah.
gets to the 5th drink, he's no good anymore.
Yeah. So after 5 p.m., no good. But no, but for me, I mean, I'm constantly on call because, editors work until 2 a.m. or,
Yeah.
they grind the midnight oil. So if someone needs something, it doesn't matter what time it is. If I'm awake, or if I see it, on my phone, I knock it out for them. So most of the time it'll say, hey, I don't need this until 10 a.m. tomorrow. I have it back in 15 minutes. Like
that's great.
they need it now. They're being polite, and I understand they're being polite, but they need it now because it's easier to work their cut and do what they need to do. And especially if they have to ship at 10 a.m. or even present, to in-house to everyone else at 10 a.m. Like, I don't want them to have to cut in VO at the very end.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is also we haven't talked about the history of VO in trailers or narration in trailers.
Yeah.
So when did, by the way, am I referring to it right? Voiceover or narration in trailers, or is there another word for it when it first started becoming? I guess trailers weren't even called trailers when they were first showing trailers, right? Like they were.
Yeah, just movie marketing ads. I think it would just be an ad for a movie is what you would call it.
And they showed them at the end of the movie, which is why they called them trailers. But like back in the day, maybe not as far back as the 30s, but certainly by the 40s, we did have kind of the beginnings of what we now think of as trailer VO, right?
Yeah, they would just be pulling whatever popular radio hosts or radio personalities at the time, big male voice, would be tapped to do that. And it's much more shouty and you must see this film. It's just much which I love. I would love it if I got to do that for a trailer. It'd be so much fun.
Yeah.
But that's, they're used to being, because there was so much radio drama and radio plays happening, which we would call podcasts now, that they were used to being dramatic on the radio, so those are the kind of people they would tap. I did research it because I didn't really know. I saw Art Gilmore did 2,700 trailers in the 1940s through the 60s.
Oh wow!
So they
he
did
must have
their
been like the go-to guy because National Screen Service was doing all that stuff back then, right?
Yes. So that would have been one of. I'm sure they had it just like today. There's a dozen or so go-to people, but some of them get more percentage of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm sure I don't know their names, to be honest with you, but it was just everything came from radio until TV. The TV announcer came, and even when the TV announcer came, it was basically still the same thing, a radio guy that they just put on camera.
Yeah.
Who stood in a room, and most of the time they were actually on camera behind that ribbon mic, just reading off cue cards, which I admire. I love watching that stuff. I'm such a geek for it, to see how they announce. And they have I love that everyone had a nice suit on, and it was just so formal. They usually had a cigarette in their hand, and they had, a nice tie on, and they had their cue cards, and like they had next on NBC. They just went for it. Like, oh, what a job, what a gig.
Yeah, that's great. Now, at what point did filmmakers or studio execs recognize that narration could be used as part of the marketing, as like a tool for the overall? Was it around the same time that guys like Hitchcock were making their own trailers, kind of breaking away from the whole NSS thing, or was it something that emerged at a different time in a different way?
No, I think you nailed it right there. Universal Pictures started making their trailer. Other houses, I think MGM as well, started doing that. And I think the narration is the fastest and easiest way to tell the audience what the film is about. You're just directly saying this film is about a woman in a park and something goes awry. The narrator's just straight up telling you. We don't have to figure out actor dialogue. We don't have to listen to sound effects. And that's why Hitchcock loved it, because it's basically like reading the back of the book. It's reading the synopsis of the film or of the book. And so you get to know exactly what's going on. And then from there, I think, they experiment with that and see, hey, does this work? Are we selling tickets? Is the movie working? And if so, other studios would just adopt that style of marketing. And what's great about it is it's not direct selling, as trailers are now. We're trying to to tell, not sell, right? We don't want to directly sell to the audience, but we still want to, obviously sell tickets, but through storytelling. And then I think I'm not sure the gap between when the Hal Douglases and the Percy Rodriguezes, and because and the more modern, I would say modern 70s voices started to kick in.
Right. So those 70s voices, if you go back to trailers for some reason, the French Connection is coming to mind, but there's like a setup. There's a guy who's setting the mood, and talking about the character, the main character, a man, so but it was a reflection of the kinds of films that were being made in the 70s and the kinds of filmmakers that were emerging in the 70s, right?
Yes, and I think people had more, they didn't have the social media attention span. And they were used to seeing plays, and they were used to things just moving at a slower pace.
Yeah.
They didn't need an instant explosion or an instant murder on screen, or they didn't need the instant fix that a modern trailer needs to sell.
Right.
And so they have time for the setup and the storytelling, and the narration is very slow. It's not rushed. It's not big. It's just someone telling you a story,
Right.
which takes me back to the 50s and 60s and 40s radio programs of everyone sits around the radio, and we have dinner or cocktails, and we listen to the story, and we're not in a rush to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
For some reason, a bunch of James Bond trailers just went through my mind when we were talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, any movie with the Sean Connery type lead actors and the whatever genre it might have been, there was like something about the mood that was captured in some of those trailers from the 70s. But I do think what I should do now that I'm thinking about it, I should go back and look at the Jaws trailer, or even the Star Wars trailers, because those campaigns in particular really marked the beginning of the modern trailer industry.
Thank you for bringing up Star Wars. That's a great one.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it about a film like Star Wars or films contemporary with that? Because another one at that time that a lot of folks point to is Alien. But what was it about campaigns at about that time that resonated with you?
It's really just, it's not a lot of footage. It's just a couple still shots, couple frames, and mostly they're teasers, I would say. They're not necessarily what you would consider a full-length theatrical trailer. And it's just very controlled. The environment is very controlled by the narrator and the quietness of it. And the setup is really in the intensity of the narrator's voice.
Yeah.
They like basically grab you by the collar and say, I have a very important thing to tell you right now. And you have to listen to this. Your life depends on it.
Yeah.
And so you lean in and you're like, I have to see this film. And I think it's just done very well. The attention pull of the time.
Right, right. Now, through the mid 80s and by the early 90s, there were a couple of trailers that we just had, a two-parter, might end up being a three-parter eventually with Benedict Coulter, where you saw a couple of trailers kind of break through what was becoming standard, very narration-driven, very VO-driven trailers. The VO often carried the trailers themselves. But there were a couple of pieces. One is coming to mind, actually, right off the top of my head. And believe it or not, it was the Lion King trailer, the original animated Lion King trailer, where I might be wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, it was basically the opening title sequence to the movie. Bah!
Yeah.
And it was the epic nature of the film brought you into the story, brought you into, ooh, I gotta see this, but there wasn't narration. I got to check with Peter AD is going to kill me if I don't get this right. But but Oren and Peter were young executives, if I remember correctly, at the time at Disney, and it was really groundbreaking for that reason, because it bent away in a very very consciously bent away from what was becoming that narration-driven VO carrying the trailer kind of a thing. How did that? How do you see that arc going? Like, and how do you see the development of trailers? Because it really didn't take hold in the 90s. It really wasn't until the 2000s. But correct me if I'm wrong. I might be getting some of my timelines wrong here. How do you see that all evolving?
No, I think the Mark Elliott's, the Hal Douglases, and the Don LaFontaines really had a hold of the time. I can see, and he was charging double scale or triple scale to record, and there's only one of him. So
Yeah.
you would have to have the editors wait to get in the booth, or you'd have to have, if. So I understand the frustration of maybe a studio executive who wanted to move quicker, or use somebody else, or go a different route, or just for creative differences, we wanted to do something different. You come down to the genre, the mix here of art and commerce. Do we want to go with an effective formula that we made $60 million or $40 million with last time, and use the same formula because we know it works with the same narrator and the same cuts and the same sequences? Or do we want to be artistic and take a little bit of a gamble? And that, because the editors always want to do cool shit. I mean, that's their job.
Yeah.
Their job is to sit in a bay, make the coolest shit they can possibly think of.
Yeah.
And then a businessman, the senior executives, is like, let's do some cool shit, but let's make money. Let's go with what worked last time, and we're gonna do a little turn on that. So I hope that the future of trailer narration is that it does come back. I don't know the form it'll take. We're in TV spots right now. Please stop putting pop my pee again. Please stop putting sound bites on radio ads, guys. I mean, it's just it works on like YouTube and things like that. But when I'm driving in my car listening on Spotify and I hear a bunch of like actor dialogue and sound effects, I don't know what it is you're marketing. It's so please just have a trailer narrator in your radio spots. I don't care who it is. Like just
Brent's PSA to the trailer industry.
Just I don't know what the story is. Like you have Jennifer Lopez screaming and then like a door slam or something. Like, yeah, I understand maybe you're trying to save money on the campaign or whatever it may be, but just give me at least say like give me a couple words, the setup, and then like give me the title and tag. Give me a little something on those radio spots, even if they're like a 15 or whatever. But I hope I've been training my whole life. I do hope trailer narration comes back. Obviously, I'm biased. And you have to do it in a cool way that's still going to cut down to social spots. That's still going to hit a 6-second bumper. I understand that there's probably not a lot of time to even say 2 or 3 words on a 6-second spot. I understand you're probably not going to use it in a theatrical first run cut. Just because that's, again, we're risking a lot of money. From a studio executive's point, we invested $100 million, $200 million into this film, and I have to make sure my job is on the line. I have to make sure that we do good and we get our money back.
I am so excited to share with you that Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods is now brought to you by the Golden Trailer Awards. Having just celebrated a wonderful GTA 24, there are many exciting developments we'll be able to share over the next year, including a documentary about the trailer industry that Monica Brady and Evelyn Brady Waters are producing. They shared a little bit more about that when they came on the show a couple weeks ago. They're producing it, and there's plenty of other news about the World Trailer Awards and much more. I'm just thrilled to be collaborating with such wonderful people like Monica and Evie, and I'm grateful for their support in bringing this program to you. Just make sure to stay plugged in at goldentrailer.com for all these exciting developments. That's goldentrailer.com. And now, on to our show. Well, go backwards. Think the other way around. So think in terms of the Marketing 101 challenge. So the job is to put fannies in the seats, or to build audience for a streaming show, or whatever piece of IP it is, whether it's for a streamer, a studio launch, putting a movie in theaters, whatever. There's a job. That's, the job is to get people interested enough to go to the theater, or interested enough to, watch this and not all of the other choices, right? So do you think that good VO, good narration helps to do that job better than all of the other tools in the toolbox? Whether it is using dialogue from the movie, whether it is using really cool music, cool graphics, cool cutting, like these are all tools in the toolbox. So to what degree does narration uniquely speak to today's market? You know what I'm asking?
I do, and I would say yes. Most people, I know you've worked very hard on your trailer, and I know that you've spent countless hours, and this is your baby. But most people are probably, unless they're like film, they're like you and they love film, they're probably going to be on their phone or like doing something else at the same time, or they're
Yeah.
watching it on like, they're just everyone's distracted.
Yeah.
So to have someone telling you exactly when the movie is coming out, what the title of the movie is, in when to see it with, a trailer narration or the story, directly just telling you what the story is. I don't think you're necessarily talking down to an audience. I think you're informing them. And if I'm on my phone scrolling, TikTok, or I'm scrolling Instagram, and I hear this announcer voice come on telling me what and when to watch it. If I didn't catch the trailer, I know to go onto YouTube and watch it because I heard the title, right? I think having the narration sells seats.
Okay, so story. We are still, no matter how digital we become, and how social media and Zoom we become, we're still at the end of the day tactile and storytelling creatures, right?
Yeah.
So that's why In a World was such a big thing. What do you know when In a World became a thing? Like when did that first? When was that first uttered on a trailer? And was it DLF? Was it Don LaFontaine?
It was. I want to say Waterworld, but it's probably before that. The one that sticks to mind the most is the Waterworld trailer with
Okay.
Kevin
It had to
Costner.
have been before then because
Yeah.
that was like 95. I was in that movie, by the way.
Were you?
Yeah, yeah.
Sweet.
I did stunt work for that movie.
Sweet.
I was like here for like 2 weeks, and I got called for this crazy movie that was like way over budget. It was $200 million, and they put us on a bus, and I didn't even know where it was because I didn't know the geography of LA at the time. But yeah, it was really cool. And I got to meet what's his name? The guy that played the bad guy in that one. A little crazy. He was a child actor, and then he had some drug problems. Oh, why can't I think of his
Dennis
name?
Hopper. Dennis Hopper.
Hopper. I got to
Yeah.
meet Hopper, and he was really cool. He showed me where the good food was. Anyway, no, it had to have been before Waterworld. That had to have been a thing like as early as the 80s. Are you looking it up?
I'm trying to find it. Yeah.
I
But
should have looked it up before we hopped on and recorded.
I'm
That
sure
shit,
someone in the audience is just screaming at the, at the
yeah, yeah.
radio right now.
In a World.
Yeah.
So, but that's
Mm.
it works. It's become cliche and kind of a joke, but it works because it draws you into a world. It draws you into the story, the world of that story, right? So that makes sense. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And my other thought is maybe the editors, producers that are cutting the trailers don't think that there's a narrator good enough to capture an audience.
Mm,
I don't know if, it'd be the opposite now, taking a risk to submit a narration-driven piece, in with your editor's cuts to a studio. That would be kind of a wild card. And have it not be, a lot of them are like a cliche version of a 90s Don LaFontaine thing. There's
yeah.
a lot of those being made, but I think they can modernize it, with the copywriting and the storytelling, and trying out new voices. Look, it doesn't cost, and even for a cost thing, hiring a narrator doesn't cost that much money. I mean, under SAG, doing a promo for that you'd see for the Grammys or something like that, it's $300 under Screen Actors Guild to hire someone for a promo. I mean,
Mm.
it's a bit more for trailers just because it's a different marketing machine, but it's not so much an expense thing as it is a style thing. And look, if you cut a piece that's trailer narration driven and submit it to testing, and testing says, Screen Engine or whatever tests it and said absolutely no, this is terrible, the whole audience hated it, then
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
we're not ready. But if it comes back and it has a 90% approval rating and people really liked that the story was just told to them, hey, now America and the world audiences are ready for this. So all this stuff can be tested.
A couple interesting developments, and this is at least the last decade or so, is to hear diverse voices. As an audience, we want to identify with the storyteller in some way, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of folks so Melissa Disney, I think, is one.
Hmm.
Just the idea of having a female narrator, like what a concept, right? Or other voices that folks might resonate. It might resonate with folks that don't, that aren't old white guys that have smoked for 40 years, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah. We're-
So that's been pretty cool. But also I was curious, how is AI starting to become a thing where someone would just kind of feed some script into ChatGPT or whatever it is, and it'll spit out a decent narration. Is that becoming a thing?
I watched a YouTube video, and during the narration, the guy had put like James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman. He just like went with all these different celebrity voices
Yeah.
during the narration portions of the video. I can tell, but I don't know if the general audience can. I don't think for theatrical marketing, they would be as brazen, just because the internet is full of people that will call them out instantly. But as far as people creating their own things and YouTube videos and sake of time and podcasting and things like that, I can see how it could be convenient and take over, because we're seen as like a topping. The narration, hiring a voice actor is seen as like sprinkles on the ice cream. Most people are
Yeah.
just trying to get the ice cream, and we're kind of seen as an extra thing. Um, when it comes to budgeting and marketing, which is unfortunate for us because we spend our whole lives training and studying to do this craft.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the theatrical world, that we will always have a role, and network promo and these things that have a long-standing history, and there are executives, and there's budgets, and there's creative directors and people that are used to working with and like working with voice talent. They
Yeah.
like directing it. They like being part of it. But certainly it'll only continue to get better and better. I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
I could
Yeah.
clone my voice and lease it. And then I would just be the same as working for a trailer music company. I would just be licensing things. That's
So
not fun though. I don't get to act. I mean, it's not. I don't.
yeah. What's interesting is so with our other shows, uh this one too, the most effective form of advertising in podcasts is what's called host-read promos, which is like Dak Shepard. You'll hear him at the pre-roll. You'll hear him, and we're brought to you by, and it's Dak Shepard's
Yeah,
voice
yeah.
on Dak Shepard's show or whatever. Same thing for me. So I was working with this company that they were trying to basically pitch us to for a politics show, pitch us to a whole bunch of potential advertisers, and the way they pitched us was they took thousands of hours of me talking, and they had it because I've done 200 and something episodes of that one. Um, and then they used that information to feed into some version of AI. I don't know if it was Chat GPT or some version of that. And then they had the basic information and tone of voice, and that they could feed a script into it and have some version of my voice come out doing that read without me having to do the actual read myself. I listened to it, and I didn't think it quite got there. But I could see that we're pretty close to. But here's the thing, I I watch a lot of documentaries on YouTube, and I'm convinced that like at least half of the documentaries that I start to watch are just AI generated.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like, here's the subject, here's a bunch of, photography or artwork in the public domain. Here's the script. It's being fed in and it's being read by an AI narrator. And I usually get about 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, this is AI. And I'll give you one example. So I was watching, I love early baseball history. So like going back to the 1800s and early 1900s, before, Babe Ruth and all that. And the narrator said something about Walter Johnson and Christy Mathewson's era, not ERA, era. Because in
Oh,
baseball
I see. Yes,
it's
sure. Yeah.
ERA, and it's
Uh-huh.
usually spelled in three capital ERA.
Hmm.
So yeah, Christy Mathewson had an era of. I'm like, oh, damn it! I've been listening to a freaking AI.
I got
You know?
tricked.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got tricked. I immediately turned it off because it's just, you know. Plus they don't really cycle in good artwork. It's not like a Ken Burns documentary. I guess I'm spoiled
Sure.
a little bit, but anyway. All right. So I have some fun questions for you.
Oh, sure.
Um, so what 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 are some of your favorite campaigns? Not necessarily stuff that you worked on, but just you love this stuff. So movie campaigns, TV campaigns. What are some of the favorite ones that come to mind for you?
I like uh, I like sci-fi films. I like futuristic films. I like, again, comedy. Um, I think, I don't know, something I get excited about. I mean, I think the Matrix franchise was something that I got really excited about when I watched a trailer, and I had never seen anything like that before. With with Keanu and the bullets and bullet time and things like that, because I just
Yeah.
love sci-fi so much. Um, I don't. Nothing's really coming to mind right now. I think the Succession trailer that just came out was really good. I like what they did with the live activation too. That was cool. The Lord of the Rings trailer was epic. Made me watch the whole
Oh,
series.
yeah.
It's just giving me a little time to actually dive into what I've seen. But yeah, that was amazing. Um, I the 28 days the newest 28 days later trailer with the sound design on that, with the boots marching, sound design was just amazing. I would think
Mm.
that's probably going to win trailer of the year in my opinion. I loved it. I think that was a Bill Neal cut, I believe. Um, um,
Either Bill
yeah.
or Steven will call me and let me know.
Okay.
They'll let me
But
know if it is. Although we're not supposed to know yet, are we? Like we're not really supposed to know who cut. But I'll find out.
I think it was in the credits and
Oh,
LinkedIn.
it was already
Yeah.
in. Okay, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I'm not really, since I have young kids, I don't really get to watch a lot of horror films. I
yeah.
watch the trailers, but I don't really get to go see them in person. So I'm not really big on getting too deep into that. The family films I think have been doing really well. We watch a lot of family films because obviously I have young kids. So
All
I
day,
love
every day.
the Despicable Me trailers campaigns are always so much fun.
Yeah,
I love that sort of stuff. Um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, but for I don't necessarily. I would consider promos trailers. I watch a ton of promos for Amazon and Netflix.
yeah.
I think the Netflix just dropped a kind of all-in-one Stranger Things led recap of all their upcoming shows, which I
Oh,
thought was
yeah,
extremely well done. But I just my LinkedIn feed I've curated to basically just watch trailers all day. That's probably why I can't think of one specifically.
oh, that's
Uh,
funny.
so I
Yeah.
just, as things go, I get to see like who's making what, and I stop and watch it. I watch it here in the studio, so I get the full sound design
Hmm.
behind it because a lot of people are watching on their phones. Um, but yeah, I don't have a necessary favorite off the top of my head, and I should. I
Yeah.
should say like this is the greatest trailer ever made.
You could come back and let us know if something
Okay.
pops up for you. But we've mentioned a few trailers, in this 45 minutes that we were talking. So some of those definitely count. At least they're nominated for your favorite trailers. What would you say? We talked a little bit about this before when you were talking about how you got into the business. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome? And part B of that is if you're talking to folks who are trying to get into the business, whether it's as VO artists or other aspects as editors, writers, designers, producers, what would you say to them is necessary or good virtues to embody in order to give themselves a long, um, you know, rewarding career in this business?
It's a common question. I get it a lot. From if someone sees a spot I did or something, they'll DM me, "Hey, I'm interested in voiceover. What steps can I take? What can I do?" Just like you have a podcast about trailers, there's tons of podcasts about voiceover. And when you say voiceover, it's it's a huge world. When people say I want to do voiceover, they're usually saying, unless they're an editor or working on promos and trailers, when they say voiceover, they mean narration for trailers. They usually want to be like a cartoon character or in a video game or do commercials.
Okay.
Um, and so I would say for that is kind of, you need someone to listen to your voice if you don't know and look at the marketplace as a whole. is your voice capable of selling Nikes? Is your
Mm.
voice capable of selling, children's Skechers? What do you sound like? I have a certain voice. It's a, male mid-range voice. I'm not going to be the best at selling, unicorn toys to 4-year-olds,
I have a
but it,
feeling my voice would be good at selling corned beef to old Jews from the East Coast. Here's
you could be yeah, you
the
could do it.
the best pastrami. I'm telling you, either that or like some sort of like heart palpitation medication or something. Is your skin falling off of you? Getting old isn't for sissies. So here's this medicine. If the skin is falling off and the fingernails, that's me. I think that's
So
what I can sell.
record it and pitch it to an agent and say, "Hey, I got this niche. Only I can do
I
this."
can sell to old Jews in New
Yeah.
York.
Uh, but if to an editor sitting in the Bay, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you, because if you get signed with an agency and you may see other competing houses cuts that you're auditioning for, or so there may be, and also the separation of having professional representation is what is going to kind of stop that process, because a lot of editors say, hey, I want to do the narration, I want to get on that side. And so I would say make the demo tape, make something great and get representation, because when it goes up the chain of command, they're going to want to know who they are and who they're represented by. But I would say get into workshops that are all over the city. Real Voice LA is in North Hollywood. I taught there for a couple of years. You get into, they throw commercial copy at you. You go through dozens of pages of commercial copy. You get in the booth. You work with the director. You see what it's like. Now we're directed basically via the internet in our headphones.
Yeah.
And so I can be directed. I was directed from Florida for my last couple of sessions for a commercial campaign. But just get used to having, you're delivering someone else's vision, right? You're just the tool to do it. So you have to be comfortable being able to audition alone by yourself.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the session, deliver their vision back to them with your voice. And that just takes seeing tons and tons of copy. Workshops here in the city in Los Angeles, and they're online. I don't think they're a lot for a workout group, maybe 30, 40, $50 for 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
And you just get in a group online with Zoom. McDonald's commercial, Nike commercial, whatever it may be, script comes up on the screen. You can just get used to seeing copy. What is the copywriter's intention? What are we doing here? Does my voice even match with this product? Would a casting director put me forward? And so by going through all these different scripts, you start finding what brands match with your voice. Audi has gone more female in the past, and you understand the market. What brands are using what type of voices. And like you said, diverse voices are huge in the marketplace for commercials right now. They're probably not going to go with this guy. There's just, unless it's a Ram truck or something that's kind of branded that way.
Yeah.
And for the video game and animation stuff, get in an animation class. Be uncomfortable. You're going to be bad at first. Okay. It's okay with being bad. It's your first workshop. Just do it. I was terrible. Could not get through a single sentence. I couldn't get through 2 sentences. I couldn't do it without like losing breath during like 8 words and having to take a breath in the middle. And there's just, when you're in the session, they want it done a certain way. They want it in 3 takes or less, and they want to move on to the next piece of copy. Having said that, in a commercial session, they may take you through take 25, 26, take 40 if you're just not giving them what they want. They will ride you until you get it. So being able to be directed easily, and going through all these different steps and taking the time and not giving yourself an arbitrary, I give myself 6 months to make $8,000 in voiceover or I quit, and it's going to take, you have to buy a microphone, you have to buy an interface, you have to invest in a soundproof kind of closet or something like that. You have to be able to deliver clean audio. So if you're not an audio engineer, now you need to learn the basics of audio engineering as well. So if you're a podcaster or, you work with sound or video, it's an easier transition for you, but it definitely can be done. I was just a guy who wanted to do it, and I just put in the work, and I'm a huge investigator. I just want to find out why things work the way they work. Who is doing well, who is making a living doing this? What are they doing? Who are they represented by? Who do they work for? What's their history? Did they come from radio? Did they come from the Bay? Did they come from on-camera acting? What's their history? And everyone has a little bit of a different path. But if you're interested, then just, try it. Just pick up a workshop, get into a class, be uncomfortable.
Are you ever asked to come up with copy on the fly?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna test you right now.
Oh God, I didn't expect you to do it.
Here we go. We're gonna do it. So if you had to pitch this show, if you had to make a promo for Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods, I'll give you a few takes if you want, but how would you what might you come up with? How can we do it in say 15 seconds or 30 seconds, whatever, however you want to do it?
In a time when narration was cliche, one man. Let's see. Well, but the show itself is more geared towards, I would say, upcoming editors, um, um, people that are interested in this world.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay, so let me give you a little bit of background. And
sure, let's do it. Yeah,
so
just talking. All right.
our audience is made up of two general parts of the population. One part you hit upon, which is, younger folks that are either in school or still, teenagers that just love trailers and are trying to do it on their phones or their, iPads or whatever, and making their own mashups. Some folks who are in the industry, but like still in the assistant phase of their careers, and they're really interested in hearing the stories of folks that they admire and are trying to work on their craft to become better editors, better designers, better, stronger and advance in their careers. The other part of our constituency is are people that are in the industry. So folks that are running marketing departments, believe it or not, filmmakers, as well as plenty of creative executives, top trailer producers, owners of agencies. They're listening too because they're learning what their contemporaries are doing. They're learning from the folks whose work that they admire. And we're all over the map. So we've had Benny, who's had this long career, but then we have Zuck, who's just, at about this time last year, who's just, the last 2 or 3 years, he's been, finishing his first trailers. So that's the audience, and the spirit of the show is we're honoring we're honoring the history of the modern trailer and creative advertising industry for entertainment. Just go key art, poster, digital campaigns by telling the story of the industry through the voices of the people who've been a part of it and who are a part of it now. So that's the show. That's the audience, and that's the show. That's what we're doing. So give me your best shot.
Now, trailers, teas now, trailers and teasers rule the media world. Behind the scenes of these blockbuster showpieces are the creative mind, are Hollywood's top creative minds, producers, editors, graphic designers, and even studio executives. Hear the story of how the modern trailer world works and where it came from. Up next on Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods.
That's great.
Yeah.
You just did that on the fly, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you probably get like direction, like, "Hey, can you do it with a little bit more, whatever?" And or, right. So you get pushed back and you do another read, and a couple of takes, and off you go. That's really cool. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
I do. Some trailer houses are just kind of just hard to get into. I mean, or just they do the same thing. And not do the same thing, but they just have their system.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately they're trying to please their client. And so I don't think it's necessarily the trailer house that has the system. I think it's the studio and the system that, is paying the bills, right? No one wants to go out on a limb and risk anything for, to bring up someone new unless they have a certain mindset of mentorship. How do you think that a trailer narrator such as myself would be able to convince studio executives that to give trailer narration a shot? I think if the studio executives say, "Hey, I want to see it. Just show it to me. We may or may not go that way. I just want to see it." Should I reach out directly and pitch the idea to a Sony, Warner Brothers, Disney, or because there's tons of people that are like me who have been standing in line for 10, 15 years, hoping to get a shot when the industry is using 10, 8 voices, 10 voices that are all represented by essentially a trailer mafia, voiceover mafia that kind of controls everything.
Yeah.
Breaking in is almost kind of intentionally controlled that it doesn't happen.
Right.
Unless you personally know the person making the thing.
Right.
So, I'm brainstorming here with you to try to, what can we do to just give it a chance, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So I first of all, I think you're on the right track, Brent. I remember when we first met, I think I came out to TO. I came out to Thousand Oaks and we hung out for a bit and you were just getting started.
Yeah.
And I probably said something similar to what I'm going to say now, which is, first of all, so many people are a lot more approachable and accessible than we probably think. Folks that are just getting started, trying to break into the industry, or maybe have been in the industry and are kind of getting up, bumping up against some resistance. I still say that not everybody, a lot of people make themselves inaccessible. So it's not. This isn't a blanket statement, but there's a lot more people at the very highest levels of this industry that are approachable and accessible if you approach them in the right way. So I would say reach out to folks, and if you don't know them, maybe hit somebody else, a common friend who does know them. And because it happens to me several times a week, if not several times a day, where it's like, hey, Corey, do you know so-and-so? And it's no sweat off my back. All I can do is hit that person up and say, hey, is it okay if I give this new person who you don't know, but I'm friends with them and they're cool. Is it okay if I give them your email? Is it okay if I give them your mobile? And worst case scenario is they don't get back to me. And sometimes I forget to tell them that, oh, they never got back to me.
Yeah.
But that's a worst case scenario. Or the person, hey, I'm not comfortable with that. That's okay. But there's a lot of people who are, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. And I pass along the email address, I pass along the mobile with my friend's permission. So people are approachable and accessible. A lot of times you could find their email your own way through LinkedIn or any of the other. You can go through Instagram, message them through Instagram or any of the other platforms. So people are more approachable and accessible. Not everybody, but a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Two is how you approach them, who you talk to, how you talk to them. How you talk to them, a lot of times, remember what I was saying about workshops, going to a casting director's workshop, hoping that they'd see me and hire me for their next commercial? Not an effective way. But when I got into an ensemble and I had the business mindset of the relational versus the transactional,
Mm-hmm.
relational, my job here is just to nurture a relationship. Because like you said, it's like they go with who they know. Right. Yeah, it's all political. Yeah, it's all political. Well, how does that happen? People get to know each other,
Yeah.
and if all I'm doing is, hey, man, you're doing some of the best work in town. I love what you're doing. Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you coffee? I'd love to get to know you, And then you circle back like nothing happens. That's cool. Hit them up in 6 months or 3 months or a year or whatever it is. Like, hey, I just saw that campaign you did on, uh, for that Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to. It's been a few months, man. I'd love to catch up with you. It'd be great just to catch up. Nurture relationships. If you're focusing on the transactional, hey, can you hire me? You get a yes or no answer. Usually it's no, because like, who the hell is this? But
Yes.
if you're building relationships, if the goal is to, build relationships, make friends, then you end up collaborating with people you want to hang out with anyway. And that's how some of the best work is done. And when I've been in the room, I'm not often in the room. I'm not often in a bay when a client calls their trailer producer, their agency. Every once in a while, I'm there. And the best people in this industry who are doing the best work, it's clear that it's not like somebody just taking notes. It's clear that it's a conversation among colleagues at the very least, if not friends, and they get the best out of each other. There's that safe space that they create for each other. And yeah, part of it is still kind of what you're saying. It's like, Motion's been working on Marvel for all these years. There's a reason. They're good at it. And oh, by the way, Ibby and Adam were in the Bay together when Ibby was still at Motion, and they're still doing work together. I'm not giving away any trade secrets, but, these guys, and they're good, and they've opened so many movies together. So relational over transactional. Now, the last thing I'll say is a lot of folks eschew doing spec work, but just freaking do it, man. Just
I
freaking
do.
do it.
Yeah.
One of the worst mistakes I ever made when I was on stage or when I was in front of the camera was I was insistent that I'm not going to do anything unpaid, and I I gave up an opportunity that thankfully the people that were doing it, they came back around to me, and I did the best play that I ever was a part of. I was Tom in a Glass Menagerie, and it played in Bucks County, and it was just such a wonderful experience. But that was just fortunate that it came back around to me. But they did an operetta. It was unpaid. It was workshopping. They were developing this original operetta, and I said, no, I'm not going to do anything unpaid. And I ended up taking a job that paid $25 per performance. And I ended up having to do a Music Man for dinner theater for like a year. It was like the worst. It was the worst year. I hated it. And that to this day. Anything from Music Man, like I can't stand it. It's just awful. And I sold my soul, my artist's
Yeah.
soul, for 25 freaking dollars per performance. It might have been like $15. It was just no, but I'm getting paid. I'm a professional, right?
Right.
So I would say if you have the opportunity, just like some of the best stories in this business, the Horvaths of the world, the Archers of the world, like some of the best opportunities that opened up to some of the best in the business was them just doing something on spec on their own time. So same goes for guys like you. It's like, no, I'm inspired by this filmmaker. I'm inspired by this series that they're developing a film off of, or this book or whatever. Like, okay, so just like what you did with me, hey man, I am so I love Christopher Nolan. I don't know what he's doing next, but let's say he's doing, I don't know. I can't think of it, but he's
The Odyssey, I think. He's doing the Odyssey
Oh,
story.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. The Odyssey. So really influential. So just come up with something. Hey, I did something. Hey, give me some feedback. Oh, it's terrible. Great. You got some feedback.
Yeah.
That's one step in developing a relationship. I don't see any downside to that because you get to work toward nurturing a relationship. You get to improve your craft. And sometimes it results in somebody finishing Lord of the Rings, like Jen did. That's how her the first one, in the first Peter Jackson movies, or a Chicago piece like Archer did, or like some of the best trailers. That's how they were done. Guys just like taking it, or just creative people taking a shot. You know,
Yeah.
so those are the three things. People are more approachable and accessible than we often think. Focus on the relational over the transactional, and embrace some spec work. Just freaking do it. That's what I would say.
And to your point, I've been, I'm a fan of the show, and a lot of the people that you've had on the show, I ended up working with over time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if I didn't know them, the show introduced me to them. And it may have taken 3 to 4 years, or
Yeah.
the show's been around a long time to finally, like you said, here's a scratch read or whatever. But eventually, maintain the relationship over 3, 4, 5 years. Eventually, like bore fruit from it. So thank
Yeah.
you for even doing the show and introducing people that are, I'd say outsiders, to the people making such great stuff. So I think you are doing an amazing educational service for, I would call us, or I'm somewhat of an insider now, but back in the time when I first wanted to do it, I didn't know these executives or their roles or what they do or what it's like working on an edit, or the kind of the process of designing a poster, or all this stuff. And it's just fascinating to learn how their minds work, learn what their day is like, and kind of gives you a lot of empathy to these people in their roles. So thank you for even doing the show. I've enjoyed it, and it's brought success in my life.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
That's the idea, man. That's
Yeah,
what we're
it
trying to do.
works. It's working.
So before we go, how can folks find you online and get more info about all the great work that you're doing?
Sure. I'm on all the socials at Trailer VO Brent, and BrentAllenHagel.com. That's ALLEN, BrentAllenHagel.com. I have all my show reels there. I'm the voice of Vice TV right now, so I'm doing all the Vice programs, Vice Sports, and we just launched Vice Sports, which is fun. And I do, radio, I do commercials, but my passion is really is the trailer work, just because it's the most cinematic, grounded expression of voiceover, and I just fucking love it. It's just so cool to sit in a movie theater and hear, for the others, see their work, or sound designers hear it, but to hear the narration come back out of a movie theater Dolby sound system, and like at the Clio Awards, it's just, I get goosebumps every time. It never gets old. It is just the greatest feeling, the ultimate drug. I just love it.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. But thank you so much for having me on the program. Cool.
Yeah, you bet. This is really cool, man. I enjoy hanging out with you. So this is a real treat for me every time. Whether it's recorded or not, So
we usually find each other at events pretty quick.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thanks again. And as always, please rate us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help us in the rankings. And follow us on all the socials. I am at Corey S. Nathan. That's Corey, S as in Sam, Nathan. Check out our awesome sponsors. Really grateful to all the folks helping us keep the lights on. Thanks again for joining us. Now go do some inspired. Actually, you do the. Go do some inspired work.
Now, go do some inspired work.
Perfect. That's great.
Cut.